So I work for a daily newspaper here that covers construction and infrastructure and kind of the changing city. And I report on the environment and green building and clean tech. So to begin with, why don't you give me a quick overview of what you are here in Seattle talking about?
Well, we're here to open an office here in Seattle of our law firm.
Okay.
Which is officially opening today.
Okay.
And I think it's just a great opportunity.
All right.
For us to have a presence in the West, particularly in Seattle, a place that's growing, a place that's dynamic. Bracewell Giuliani is a nationwide, worldwide law firm. We do a tremendous amount of work in the area of clean tech and all of the emerging new energy technologies. Probably at one time or another have represented most of these new technologies, either in the process of their trying to gain financing or support or having to deal with local, state, and federal regulations. We do all of that in Texas, in Washington, in New York, in Connecticut. It's one of the biggest areas of our practice. And we do a great deal of work in intellectual property. That's another one of our, I would say, specialties. So we've been doing a certain amount of work here. The law firm has, different lawyers have. And this seemed like a perfect opportunity to really establish a presence here in Seattle, and one that can help us in doing work in Canada, in the rest of the West Coast, and maybe even in Asia.
So why is Seattle a good place to open a law office right here, right now?
Well, it's still a really growing area. Of course, you've got tremendous companies here. You've got a lot of a tremendous transient population that moves through from Asia to the United States. It's an exciting community. The opportunity is there. I mean, a whole host of reasons. And we've been very successful. We've recently opened offices in New York and Connecticut, meaning within the last 5 years, and they both have been very successful.
And how much of the practice here is going to focus on clean tech?
You never know.
Okay.
You know, when we started in New York, we started with 4 lawyers, and the practice to some extent involves energy, a lot of energy work, and we thought it would involve almost exclusively energy work, and it turns out that we now represent a number of financial institutions, private equity funds. We've done a great deal of distress work in New York and Connecticut, and we do a lot of white-collar criminal investigations and work. And those are areas that I can't say it was unexpected, but that wasn't exactly the plan. It just happened to provide a great deal of growth for us. So you never know. Things always turn out a little different than your plans, but given the nature of the economy here and the way it's growing and the opportunities here, we think this is an excellent place to establish a law firm.
And when you say clean tech encompasses a whole bunch of different
Well, you
things.
can define it 2 ways, right? Or 10 ways, but you can define it 2 ways. You can define it narrowly or broadly.
Okay.
You can define it as just renewables, or you could define it as all those things that will either eliminate or reduce the elimination of carbon. And I think that's a more realistic way over the next 20 years to describe it, because sometimes reducing it is the only practical thing that can be done right now, and reducing it is a great social advance and a great environmental advance. So I prefer to see it defined more broadly as elimination or remediation of emissions.
Where do you see the biggest potential?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of potential, and the discussions that I've had with the people here, a tremendous amount of potential with solar power, particularly on the West Coast, and particularly here. I've always thought that solar power's potential would become really activated and real if we could find an effective way to store the power. But the only way you're going to find that is by research and development.
Right.
And money devoted to research and development that is extensive. I mean, That's a very big solution. That's going to cost a tremendous amount of time, energy, and dollars to do. But if you did it, just think of the tremendous advance that you'd make if you could store the power that's generated by wind so that it's delivered consistently over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That then could also apply to solar power, which is also similar. You know, you can get a great deal of power from the sun when the sun is there, but you can't when it isn't. And energy has to be delivered 24 hours a day on a consistent basis. If you could find a way to store that, that again requires research and development. Hybrid vehicles, like electric vehicles. These are all things that are very offer a great deal of opportunity. I think that we can't ignore clean coal,
Mm-hmm.
because coal is the more coal resources in the United States, I believe, than there are oil resources in Saudi Arabia. And if we don't want it, others do. So to the extent we can find ways of cleaning coal and making it less, you know, damaging, that's enormously important. I think natural gas is important. I think upgrading our transmission lines.
What about oil?
Creating more efficiency.
Mm-hmm.
Well, oil plays a role. I mean, it whether people like it or not, it'll play a role because we need it. But if you could start limiting the role by supplying the needs from other sources, to every percentage by which you can reduce the role, the less we'll have a dependence on foreign oil, and the more we'll be in control of our own destiny.
Is that the ultimate goal?
I think the ultimate goal is effective independence. Effective independence does not mean that we can produce all of the sources of power here in the United States, but at least if we can produce enough of them and have diversity with regard to the rest, then we'd be a lot more secure than in having to rely so much and having the world rely so much on oil from just one very volatile part of the planet, which is the cause of a great deal of our problems right now. You don't have to have, I mean, you can achieve independence through diversity. When people say, you know, energy independence, simplistically it sounds like, well, all of it will be produced in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can be energy independent if enough of it is produced in the United States, and the rest of it comes from diverse sources that doesn't have you at the mercy of any one country or region.